Hey there berries, welcome to my patch 11.8 support tier list. Now there's quite a few different changes here for enchanters specifically. I'm going to dub this one as the Yuumi patch because even though there's no actual direct buffs or changes to any support or any AD carry really, there's lots of interesting changes specifically for Yuumi and her enchanter friends as well. So we're going to look at the patch notes first, and then we're going to move on to the tier list, which should help you direct you on what you can kind of play in solo queue to increase your chances of winning your games, hopefully. So the big one, which is going to affect every single enchanter support, will also affect a lot of different champions in the game already, as they've all been taking them, is the Ionic Boots of Lucidity. This is the 50 gold increased cost. It's not too much, but it is still a nerf overall. But not for Yuumi because she doesn't need boots, so she saves 50 gold. This also affects Thresh. I was taking cooldown reduction boots on Thresh, and I think I was taking it occasionally on some of the tanks like Alistair and stuff if I didn't really need something too tanky. So sucks all around, mainly hits, pretty much supports pretty hard. The 50 gold. Frozen Harp for a tank buff, it's there. No one really took it anyway. I don't know if anyone's even going to be taking it still. But it is what it is. The item needed buffing for sure, so it's welcome. Now here we get into the complicated stuff, which I'll do my best to guide you through it. The Moonstone has always been difficult to talk about and explain, but there are changes coming in, and I think, overall, analyzing all the different information, including the other items, I think overall enchanters are probably getting slightly buffed. I'll explain why, but there's a lot of information here, so just bear with me. So the Starlit Grace heal, which is the proc from that heals, is being reduced from 50 to 100 down to a flat 60. So when you pick this up first, so if you're going Moonstone first, I know a couple of you guys were doing Stealth Flowing Water first or Ardent first, but the large majority of you were doing Moonstone first. So this is going to have no impact on you on your early game purchases at all. So don't worry about that. So when you pick this up, it's still going to be as strong, basically. Now, each second, this is what happens currently. Each second in combat increases the base heal by 12.5% up to 50%. Now, with the new changes, each second in combat increases heal and shield power by 4%, going all the way up to 20%. So it's now in effect, basically, this will buff all heals and shields, all of them, all of that you apply, including this number here, the 60. Okay. And obviously, as the heal and shield power gets stronger, this base amount here gets stronger too. On top of that, this is what most people might deem as a nerf. The 5 ability haste is being removed on the mythic bonus. So every time you got a legendary item, you're getting 5 ability haste. Now, it's going to increase this 60 amount by 10. This, I'm not 100% sure yet. It's going to take a lot of getting used to feeling it through. But 10 extra healing on the base amount and then stacking up with up to the 20%. You're going to enter numbers that are similar to this. But because it's also heal and shield increase, it's going to buff your redemption if you've got that. It's going to buff any shields that you have. And it's going to buff any heals that you have. So if you're playing something like Nami, her W heal will be increased. If you're playing Soraka, or all of her heals will be increased as well. So overall, in terms of like pure healing, this is a buff. In terms of dishing out as many abilities as possible, it's enough. Okay, so that's the trade-off. More healing, but less cooldown reduction. So against like bursty teams, assassins and things, technically you're slightly stronger. Against those drawn out fights, technically if you only have this item, then you're going to be slightly weaker in my opinion. Because you wouldn't have the extra cooldowns for whatever crowd control effects that you have. Now, I'm going to keep talking about Moonstone here. I'm not going to talk about Shurelya's just yet because that's a big change. We're going to look at Staff of Flowing Water. So as I mentioned, we lose the 5 ability haste per legendary item on the Moonstone. The Staff of Flowing Water has now been changed to no longer grant movement speed, but it will now grant ability haste. A 20 ability haste on the proc for 4 seconds, up from 3. Now at first when I was reading this, I thought, okay, well this is pretty bad. Staff of Flowing Water was only really taken for, you know, the movement speed was huge. I've always said that the movement speed is such a hard stat to get, and 15% movement speed is pretty big. But because you're losing the 5 ability haste, which is the equivalent of 4 legendaries, to the 20 ability haste that you'll be gaining with Staff of Flowing Water, I still feel you'll be picking up Staff of Flowing Water second to make up for the fact that you've lost this 5 ability haste. Now, if you can do lots of shield uptime in fights or heals, then this Staff of Flowing Water is going to be bigger for you. So something like a Lux who's constantly doing her shield out, but then it comes back in again on multiple targets, that 4 seconds ends up being more like 6 to 7 with just one button. So that's the kind of thing that you're thinking more towards. I think overall this is a good Enchanter Lux buff. For Yuumi, this is really, really good because, you know, she's going to give herself and her target 20 ability haste pretty much perma anyway. But it does suck, you know, they don't have quite as much movement speed, but her E provides movement speed anyway, so it's not like the end of the world. So, you know, and then Yumi's heal is going to be doing up to 20, well, generally 20% more in a fight anyway, so her heals are going to be absolutely crazy. So overall, I think for some enchanters, this is going to be pretty good. And for the enchanters that don't heal as much per second, maybe like the Nami, for example, depending on if she gets heal bounces off, it depends on the type of fight. But overall, I think you'll be fine because, you know, if you're in combat, you'll be proccing the heals, which in turn will be proccing Moonstone, which the Moonstone would then proc the Staff of Flowing Water. So in a team fight anyway, generally, as long as you can keep being in combat, you should be able to, on yourself at least, keep that 20 ability haste. The one thing you just be missing out is once again your heals will be doing more now, and now you've got the cooldown reduction back, but now you don't have quite as much movement speed. So yeah, that's the main downside. You haven't got the movement speed, but everything else should be fine, and your heals should be stronger. So that's the trade-off: less movement speed, but now more healing. Now we will talk about Shurelya's. Let me get rid of some of these lines. So that's the main interaction change between Moonstone and Staff of Flowing Water. Alright, let's get rid of these lines just so it's not too confusing. So, Shurelya's has been changed completely. It was almost an entirely different item. So you've no longer got the next 3 damaging instances deal magic damage. That's no longer in. What's now in is empowering or protecting allies, but not including yourself. Give both allies 25% movement speed. So now it's a passive I don't know what this both means. I'm going to need clarification. I'm assuming it means yourself and the target that you're like shielding or healing or whatever will now give you a burst of movement speed. So you can see that you basically like how now you have to choose now between having the movement speed, the old movement speed that you were getting from Staff of Flowing Water, but worse heals. Also, Shurelya's, it will now be getting, there's no more movement speed on the item. It's going to be exchanged for ability haste. So now you need to think about what the trade-off is. So do you need more movement speed or do you need more healing? That's what it like ultimately comes down to. So it's going to be quite a different item build order now, depending on what you need. Shurelya's also builds from the same build path as Moonstone, so you could always, you know, change up whatever you need to do. You know, in order which item you want to pick up, like later on as the laning phase goes on. But you can see how the stats are basically being swapped between the different items, and now it gets a bit more complicated. I think like if you are going Shurelya's, you don't need to buy a Staff of Flowing Water because you already got the 20 ability haste already. Well, eventual the ability haste passive on the Shurelya's. So you could do like Shurelya's into a Redemption or the Chemtech and then finish off with the Redemption or Chemtech. I think that is a viable option. You could also do like an Ardent as well. So basically if you go Shurelya's, I don't think you should generally go Staff of Flame Water. That's basically it. If you go Moonstone, you have to go Staff of Flame Water. So these two items are basically linked. And then Shurelya's, you basically do not buy Staff of Flame Water. Is my opinion on that. Just because you'll be overstacking on the ability haste and you don't need that. And you kind of need more things to proc the empowering still, because that's the main issue you're going to have now, is that yes, you're going to be giving yourself and your target more movement speed, but it's only 1.5 seconds duration. And you don't have something like that. You can't buy a Moonstone because you've already got a mythic item. So you need something else that will help generate procs. So empowering could also include maybe like an Ardent. So say if you're applying like maybe Font of Life debuff on a target, if they hit that target, that will probably proc Shurelya's. I don't have absolute confirmation on that, but that starts ending up like quite interesting. So say if you're playing Nami and you're running Font of Life, you do your ulti, you know, you apply the Font of Life debuff to everyone. Any allies that hit those targets will gain 25% movement speed every time they auto attack that target and get healed at the same time. You could interact that with an Ardent Sensor. So if they're hitting that target, they're getting healed. That also will give them Ardent Sensor buff. So you can kind of see where this is going to heading into. So you need to find other ways to proc the Shurelya's with other interactions with the game, whether it's Redemption, the Font of Life that I just mentioned. There might be one or two. Let me know in the comment section down below if there's something else that I've maybe missed out on. But you can kind of see the idea of where this is going now. It's messy. It's going to take a little, you know, a patch for us to kind of get used to this. I think it's for the best because Shurelya's was absolutely garbage. And now it's actually a competitive item pick to Moonstone. So it's going to be fun testing out the differences between the two. So yeah, hopefully that kind of helps out my thought process on those items. Chemtech is getting a nice little buff. I think overall this is the buff. It says item adjustment, but plus 5 AP. They've made it so I believe if you healed yourself, you would give yourself the 60% Grievous Wounds, but now you have to absolutely do it on an ally for both of you to get the yourself included to get the 60% heal debuff on your next attack. So overall, this Chemtech got a nice little 5 AP buff. Obviously, it's nothing crazy, but I think this is overall a buff. I mean, the situations of you healing yourself to do a 60% Grievous Wound debuff to win a fight is, yeah, virtually non-existent. So Chemtech got buffed. Stonks. So yeah, hopefully that that clears that up for you. Hopefully that makes this patch a little bit more understanding in terms of item changes. And now we're going to head into the tier list and have a look what that all means. So as usual, you got the not so good champions in tier 5. That hasn't changed. In tier 4, nothing got changed there either. If you're familiar with the previous tiers, nothing got changed there. There aren't really any champions there that got affected in tier 5 or tier 4. So we'll move on. Tier 3, we did do a little shift. I did move Zillion back down from tier 2 to tier 3. Apart from that, I mean, Karma, you could probably run the new item changes, and the same as Soraka. I just feel like overall, they're good in lane. To be fair, the Soraka and the Karma are good in lane, and lane harassment. Actually, also Seraphine also can interact with the items. Like, these champions are... Like, Soraka and Karma are pretty good in lane. Seraphine isn't. But these two champions in particular, Soraka and Karma, are absolutely rubbish outside of lane, in my opinion. Like, their value goes down at 15 minutes. Even with Soraka's like immense healing, she just gets focused down way too quickly. And I think with the movement speed, because you're going to want to go probably Moonstone still on Soraka, because she has so many heals on her with the new shield heal and shield power, that Shurelya's might be too much of a waste. That she's going to be a little bit more vulnerable, and I think that's going to be an issue. So I don't think she's going to be able to get away easily at all in fights later on. Seraphine's an interesting one. I think she could potentially be tier 2. If someone said Seraphine tier 2, I wouldn't care to argue that much. I just feel like her laning phase is just a little bit too weak, which makes you vulnerable. But, her R button, the ultimate, can be pretty just insta-win button. So, sometimes it's a bit much to rely on just the insta-win button. But, it is there. It's an option, for sure. Tier 2. We've got a lot more uses here now with the changes. I did move Brom up from tier 3 to tier 2. I feel like he's got... I feel like he's pretty strong and underrated at the moment. So Brom tier 2 as your tank, defensive tank. These changes also make it so that, I wasn't doing it personally, but Moonstone, Zyra is not a thing anymore. And the same with like a lot of these kind of champions. You could probably argue also Morgana tier 2 to tier 3 with those changes, but I feel like, particular in the low ELOs, like silver, bronze, iron, I feel like Morgana's pretty basic and easy to understand and still pretty strong, especially if you're linking up with someone like a Caitlyn, high range, auto attacker that can set up off the traps, like off the binding, sorry. So Caitlyn can put down her trap on the binding, and then you could basically kill a target during laning phase. You got Varus option there as well. The black shield helps his immobility. And the binding helps sets up for skill shots as well. You can do like Varus ulti into Morgana binding, and it gets pretty disgusting. The crowd control on one target there, and then the black shield protects the Varus from any crowd control about to come through. And Varus is becoming more meta at the moment. So Morgana's got some nice interactions with some of these champions that are doing quite well in lane at the moment. Lulu, very, very strong at the moment. Just a bit of coin flip depending on what your AD carry is like. If you can trust your AD carry, she goes up to tier 1. If you can't, then tier 2. She's still like okay in fights without having a decent AD carry, but obviously the W steroid, you'd want to have that. Sona, very, very good with the new item changes. It's kind of difficult to get out of laning phase, but in the gold minus, games are still lasting quite long, so Sona still gets a lot of value eventually if you can make it through the laning phase. So yeah, should be constantly be able to do those buffs and stuff. Nami, solid tier 2 pick. No real Downside for her for this patch, just kind of like, you know, as we talked about, she's just fine. She can proc off lots of different things if she needs to. You got the Font of Life option as well, which works well with her E, her Q, her ulti. So Font of Life on Nami is probably likely to happen. Alistair, yeah, very, very strong pick right now. Very solid tier 2, tier 1 as well. Like, it's tier 1 potentially, like if you are a god at roaming, harass the mid laner, can do a very, very good job of that. Same with Thresh as well. Thresh in high elo, like plat, high plat, you know, entering into Diamond Plus. Thresh has always been kind of very, very strong. If you're watching this tier list for some reason and you're in Plat Plus, then Thresh is your go-to pick. Really, for a tank, he's very good. Same with Alistair. Tier 1, you got Leona, Janet, Yuumi, and Brand. Once again, not changed. Yuumi benefits a lot from this patch. A lot. She actually, like, if there was a tier 0, she'd be there. I think she's the strongest pick here now for sure. I think Yuumi was already busted, and now she's going to be super super busted. So expect to see some Yuumi nerfs, in my opinion, in the coming patches. Jenna also benefits from this a lot as well, so she gets pretty strong from this too. And she's already been, like, you know, she's already really good in solo queue. Brand, you know, no direct changes for him directly, but particularly in like plat minus, he's very good at solo carrying games. And Leona, the best tank for most people to play. You can still roam with her like the Alistair and Thresh. She's incredibly tanky and very easy to play. And you have her ult is on incredibly low cooldown, so you can engage and kind of like disengage from a really safe distance as well. Whereas, you know, the Alistair can't disengage from that from a safe distance. The Thresh can have his lantern, but he can't, you know, if multiple teammates are getting caught out, you know, only one person can click that lantern. If they click the lantern. A big if. But I hope this tier list helps you. I hope that gives you a better understanding of the patch notes, and me going through it explains the item changes a little bit and what kind of direction you want it to go. Later this evening, I'm going to be in a Twitch Rivals tournament. Wish me luck. I'll upload the rest of the Twitch Rivals tournament videos on the channel soon. As you know, the day or two after, because I need to like upload them and stuff. But if you guys are enjoying the content, make sure you subscribe for more tier lists. I bring them out every 2 weeks. And gameplay from Diamond Plus. If you are interested in any champions that I'm currently playing in the current meta, then have a look at the YouTube channel and see what you can find. Other than that, take care and see you in 2 weeks' time for another tier list. See you, berries. Bye.